What's up, everybody? Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Well, we've been troubleshooting a lot of stuff with the show. I think we finally got it figured out. We've run 3 complete tests in a row without any issues, but we'll get into that a little bit if you want to later. But today I'm really going to focus on your questions. We ran a show on Tuesday and had some degradation problems like we've been having, but finally got that figured out, I think. So we're going to answer your questions, do a little extra bonus show. So go ahead and get those in now because that's pretty much the whole show. We don't have any questions. We don't have much of a show today. All right. All that and more on today's episode of Hawg Sports Live. And before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on YouTube. You can tune in on X. You can tune in on Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to those channels and set the notifications so you're alerted anytime we upload new videos. We're also on Instagram now. If I got to start it myself here, go live. Did I do it right? Well, we're not on Instagram, I guess. I haven't figured out everything. So not on Instagram, but we're on the other channels right now and will be uploaded to your favorite podcast platform as soon as the show is over. That's Spotify, Google Podcasts, of course, Apple Podcasts. Throw us a 5-star review on those platforms if you haven't done so already, and let other people know what you think of the show also. All right. Hawg Sports also just 30% off right now for your first year at HawgSports.com. There's 2 ways to sign up. You can sign up for 30% off, or you can sign up for full price monthly. The full price monthly plan actually comes with Paramount Plus for absolutely free. I don't know why you would be subscribed to to Paramount Plus if you weren't subscribed to Hawg Sports. You get Paramount Plus for free. So you can do the 30% off deal. It breaks down to $627 a month. It's billed at $75.18 for the year. It's a discount of $44.22. Or you can sign up for Hawg Sports for the monthly plan, which breaks down to like $120, and you also get Paramount Plus for free, which is also about $120 a year. Pretty good deal. Commercial free version also. All right, let's just hop right into questions. So the secret is getting to this 5-minute mark, and that's when our signal started to degrade. So if we get past that, things are looking good. All right. Rusty Henry says, do you think Monte Harrison will help us this year? Okay, so Monte Harrison, the transfer, or not a transfer, well, it's from Major League Baseball, minor league baseball. He's a former Major League Baseball player. I think he spent like 18 games in the major league, so he made it there, and he spent more time than Kevin Costner did in Bull Durham. This guy's an incredible athlete. He's like 6'2", 6'3", 218, something like that. What people tell me, like from Nebraska and stuff, because he was committed to Nebraska originally as a 4-star prospect. And they say you should have seen this guy play basketball. So baseball, basketball, football, this guy's just a flat-out athlete. The benefit for Arkansas is, well, he's 28 years old, so he's going to get nicknames like Uncle and all that kind of stuff. But the benefit for Arkansas is he doesn't cost them a scholarship. Now, there may be some NIL deal or something like that. Not really sure how that works because Major League Baseball is going to pay for his college. So he's basically like getting a scholarship player for free. I do think he'll help them this year. I think he's one of the more intriguing players to watch. There was a move by Nebraska a while back, I was told, to try to get him back into the fold, recommitted to them. But this is a scholarship type of athlete. Again, 28 years old, big-bodied, athletic. I mean, good enough athlete to make it to Major League Baseball, and probably could have played college basketball and obviously could have played college football, former 4-star prospect. So really intrigued with what he can bring to the table. I think it's a really interesting addition. The Noob Tube Gaming says, are we in better shape on the lines this year? If so, how much better? So I thought that Arkansas was in pretty good shape defensive line last year also. In fact, I thought they had an exceptional defensive line based on what we saw in the spring and in fall camp. That was largely, at least partially, I should say, based on Arkansas' struggles on the offensive line. Didn't think they were going to have a great offensive line, didn't think they were going to be just horrendous last year, which they were. And it wasn't just the offensive line, it was also tight ends, running backs. Nobody could really block. The defensive line last year had injury issues and still didn't really feel it because to me, that was probably the deepest defensive line that Arkansas has ever had. They were able to go a solid 3 deep with veteran players. That hasn't happened before. Now, this year, They've lost some guys, obviously, Trajan Jeffcoat, John Morgan, Jashad Stewart would be some names that stick out at defensive end. But they did bring in Anton Junkaj. He's into the fold now. You've got a couple of guys that have actually moved to defensive tackle, Caleb James and J.J. Hollingsworth, who actually moved last year to defensive tackle, who are a little bit undersized. They go about 280, 270, so a little bit undersized for defensive tackles, but those guys could move out to end if you needed them to. So you've got Landon Jackson, who's an all-SEC player, future NFL guy. And then on the other side, you've got Nico Davier, who's, I believe, a redshirt sophomore this year. Is he a junior? I don't think he ever redshirt. I think he's a junior this year. But he's going to be pushed by Anton Junkaj, who was an FCS All-American last year, who hit the transfer portal as a 4-star addition. And on the other side, you've got Quincy Rhodes, who's very similar in size to Landon Jackson. Quincy goes about 6'6", 290, something like that. He's a big kid. So that's your 4 deep at defensive end. I think you're in pretty good shape with that 4 deep. But in the transfer portal age, as I said before, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to have, a 3 deep. So that's where I think J.J. Hollingsworth and Caleb James possibly come into the fold. Maybe guys that work inside and outside, but you also have the freshman. Charlie Collins was the number 65 ranked prospect in the entire country last year. He's a true freshman. The problem with true freshmen, you also got Kavion Henderson, who is a 4-star recruit on the other side out of Alabama. So that gives you a pretty true 3 deep. The only problem with freshmen to me is sometimes they get crumbled a little bit in the run game. They collapse a little bit in the run game. They can get after the quarterback, but that can be an issue. Collins is probably physically a little bit more ready to handle that kind of stuff. I could see them also working Kavion Henderson out, as we've talked about, the wide 9 when they run that mint front, just way outside, rushing the quarterback. He goes about 6'2", 240 or so. We haven't seen an updated weight on him. Collins is more like 6'4", 265, so a little bit more weight on Collins. But this 8-week summer training cycle is going to be big for both of those guys. Now, on the interior, you've got Eric Gregory, possibly the most underrated Razorback on the team right now. He's a 5th-year senior. 5th-year super senior. This is a 6th year. You never heard about him. Maybe he'll enter the transfer portal. And all the depth that they had on the defensive line last year, you still had him starting all 12 games. That's impressive. Cam Ball is a guy that they think has NFL ability right next to him. And then behind those guys, you've got Kiwi Rose, who started some games for him last year. He was a Louisiana Tech transfer who was a good player for him last year. And then you got Ian Gerfard, who goes 6'5", 380, I believe is what he has out right now. He might drop a little bit, obviously, this summer, but it's a big dude right there, a guy that they have a lot of, high hopes for. That's 2 Georgia defensive tackles in your 2 deep. Now, the next key piece was getting Danny Salee out of BYU. Danny was the number 5 ranked defensive tackle in the junior college ranks, signed with BYU, was only there a semester, and then entered the transfer portal, and Arkansas got him. So you've got 5 solid guys right there. And then you start, you get a little bit light with Caleb James and Hollingsworth. You just smaller guys who recently moved, especially James. He just moved over there, and he's just a redshirt freshman. So, but I think 5 is going to get you a pretty good number, and hopefully you stay healthy there. So I think the defensive line is probably one of the more underrated groups overall. Now we switch it over to the offensive line. They will be improved. They will be improved. I did not see the same amount of penetration as they had last year. They're not going to be Oklahoma's offensive line. They're not going to be Georgia's offensive line. They may not even be an average offensive line. I think that's possible. I do think that they will be a much improved offensive line, even though that may only get them to average or even below average. Fernando Carmona was the biggest addition for them. Maybe period. Maybe aside from getting a quarterback, maybe that's about as big as you can get getting your left tackle. This is a guy that was still really heavily pursued even after he landed at Arkansas with some tampering issues, as Eric Mateos, the offensive line coach, has pointed out. And then, I mean, Auburn was just like blowing him up. Like after he called Auburn and said, "Hey, I'm not going to take the visit. I'm going to sign with Arkansas," they were just blowing him up. No, you don't want to do that. Please come to the visit and everything. So this guy was pretty highly coveted. Addison Nichols on the interior at center. They needed a center. They needed a guy that's a true center. I felt like Bo Limmer a little bit was out of position. Now, Bo did end up going to the NFL, but I just feel like he's a much better guard than he was a center. And that's possible, having him move there and just, play there out of necessity, really. And then you've got Keyshawn Blackstock at the other spot. who was a transfer from Michigan State. And I've said before, I think on the last show, that I would probably rank those guys in order of Fernando Carmona, Addison Nichols, Keyshawn Blackstock in terms of maybe how good they are. Joshua Braun is back, who was an All-SEC performer last year. I think he was one of the better guys that they had up front. Maybe him and Limmer were probably the best guys. And at left guard, I think it's very important that they moved Patrick Kudus inside. Just did not feel like he was a good option for them at left guard. And, that's kind of what at right tackle, but he's at left guard now. That's kind of what I had said a lot last year. Like, Andrew Chamblee, going to be a good player one day, not quite ready. Patrick Kudus, going to be a good player, maybe a little farther along, but not quite ready. And lo and behold, those guys end up starting out of necessity. So that was, unfortunate for them because neither of them were ready to be starters in the SEC and go against, what's coming at you in the SEC on the defensive line. So, yes, better on the offensive line. You've also got Takias Crawford and Marion Harris are probably your next couple of guys. The numbers aren't quite what you'd want on the offensive line. I think they only have 13 scholarship guys. So you want at least 15. I think you need 17, 18. I think that would be a good number. So long answer there, but defensive line I think should be pretty good. Offensive line should be better, but I don't know if that gets to them, to the next level. And Bobby Petrino too. I think having him, Dan Enos and Cody Kennedy just butted heads. They could not get on the same page. Kennedy couldn't teach or didn't know how to teach or wouldn't teach what Enos wanted to teach or Enos was just a terrible communicator when it came to that. It was something that didn't work. I kind of probably, if I had to guess, I'd probably put it more on Enos than Cody Kennedy, even though he caught all the flack for it. So Bobby Petrino is going to get them more shored up. They'll be better at tight end. They'll be better at pass pro, at running back. I guarantee you that. That's been one thing that Bobby Petrino, he's not going to put anybody out there who can't protect. Just not. Hope that answers your question. So we have gone 14 minutes and 39 seconds left so far. We haven't lost signal. We haven't degraded signal. We're running smooth. If anybody wants to know what all I've been through here, so I've gone through getting a new capture card, getting a new dock, plugging directly into Ethernet. None of those things were the solution. Ultimately, I was on Chrome and I just cleared everything out, like started from scratch, and it worked. I ran some tests and it worked. And then the next thing I do is surf around a little bit, log back into everything, yada, yada, run a test again, and it doesn't work. And then I cleared the cache, cleared everything out, history, all that stuff, rebooted, started again, and it worked. Surfed around a little bit, did the same thing, tried another stream, and it didn't work. For some reason, I can't have anything stored. So the next step was to use Safari. I was like, well, instead of trying to log out everything every time, I'll use Safari. So I used Safari and not supported by StreamYard. So then I downloaded Firefox. And so I'm just keeping Firefox dedicated, although I have to be logged into Facebook on Firefox, which I was a little scared because when I started this, I had to log into Facebook. Oh my gosh, why should that mess anything up? So it looks like that's been okay. So I'm on Firefox. I'm just going to use this for StreamYard. And so far, so good. Wasn't the internet, wasn't my capture card, didn't need to be plugged directly in, wasn't my dock. It was something to do with Chrome, which is, by the way, recommended by StreamYard as the server to, or excuse me, as the browser to use. I mean, I've been troubleshooting this thing for 2 weeks. And it comes down to just using a different browser, basically. Although the quality is better. I'm glad I got this new CamLink capture card because the quality I feel like is better. And I'm also, I've never run in 1080p at 60 frames per second, and that's what we're running. I usually go 720 at 30. So we're humming right along right now. I feel like the audio is also syncing up. I feel like I would lose sync with my lips and the audio. All right. Next question. What side of the ball will have the better year? So I'm inclined to think the defense is going to be comparable to what it was last year. Now, it needs to be better because, as I've said before, everybody is going to be better across the SEC. Middle, lower tier is going to be better. So I'm inclined to think the defense, I felt like the defense just kind of let go of the rope last year at the end, starting with the Auburn game. Started thinking about, where am I going to be after this? I mean, it was clear the Auburn game that they didn't want to be out there. That was clear to me. I think it was probably clear to everybody. They got their tails whipped and then did it again against Missouri. But before that, the defense was pretty solid. They made dramatic improvement in pass defense. So I'm inclined to say defense, just because the offense has such a big step to make from last year. Now, I do think that they're going to be improved. They have Bobby Petrino. The offense is going to be better. But it comes down to the fourth quarter sometimes of making plays. A lot of times, you'll hang with a team, and like, how many times have people said something like, they hung with Alabama until the fourth quarter? Well, yeah, that's when Alabama turns it on. Alabama's the slow death team. They kill you at the end. So I'm going to say defense. I think the defense, but I do think we'll see marked improvement from the offense. Bryce Bryant says, did Bobby step up to HC if the season doesn't pan out? Hopefully we don't have to find out. I mean, the ideal situation is that we don't find out, that this team does a great job and wins a lot of games. I do know that Sam Pittman's goal one day is to pass the keys off to somebody on staff. This was something that he mentioned to me before Bobby Petrino was ever hired. He wants to get the program in great shape to where you can pass it off, because if it's not in great shape, it's a restart. You can't pass it off. There's like 60 people that work under him, staffers, coaches, all that stuff. And most of those people will be looking for new jobs when you do have a coaching change. That's the reality of it. He doesn't want that to happen. He wants to pass the keys off. So who is that guy? Maybe I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, because he certainly never said, I have a timeline. I don't think that's the case at all. But we could envision a scenario where things go really well on offense, the team plays well, and maybe the keys get passed to Bobby Petrino. I could envision something like that. So, yeah, I don't know that that's – we come up with all these ideas. Like, you guys remember when John Pelphrey was head coach, and it was like, it's just a matter of time until Kentucky comes after him and takes him from him. And everybody was like, but that'll be okay, because that means he would have gotten Arkansas in great shape and all that stuff. I mean, that didn't even come close to happening. I mean, so we try to come up with all these ideas and predict the future, but it just never pans out the way we think it might. Matt Hodges says, do you know if they're sticking with the morning practices for fall camp or going to the afternoon practices? I really hope that they stick to the morning practices. I love that. For me personally, like, having practices in the afternoon mean I work all night. If they have practices in the evening, I'm going to work all day anyway, right? I'm going to work all day, and then I'm going to work at night, because that's just what I do. But if they have practices in the morning, that means I work that all day, and then I get to spend time with the family, have dinner together, do stuff. I mean, it's really nice to be able to have morning practices. It's not going to be practical when the season gets up and going, but I think it could be practical for fall camp, and I hope that that's what they decide to do. I mean, during the season, our access really is Monday, Tuesday, a Zoom press conference on Wednesday. So we have practice availability on Monday and Tuesday. So it's not that bad on us personally. And with the players, they're done when, they may have film study and stuff like that, but they're, for all intents and purposes, done with practice when it ends. For me personally in media, our work kind of just begins. And so I would rather work days than nights if I had my preference. Chad Razorback says, considering the close losses to great teams early in the season last year, do you think we have a better team than what most people think we have? That's a really great point. I mean, let's bring up the schedule from last year. Oh my gosh, I'm off the keys. We know the first game that they lost was BYU, obviously, and they lost by 7 points. Never should have lost that game. BYU finished with a losing record last year, by the way. So they lose by 7. They rallied the next week. They went to Baton Rouge and battled them. They played great for, I think, maybe all but the last 18 seconds of the first half. They played great in that game. The second half was just a shootout. You couldn't stop them. They couldn't stop Arkansas. Lost 34-31 in that one. Texas A&M beat them pretty good, 34-22. Wasn't a blowout, but that felt like they were well in control of that game. They could have beaten Ole Miss 27-20. They could have beaten Alabama. This is at Ole Miss, at Alabama, 24-21. Mississippi State game is one of the 5 worst games I think I've ever covered for Razorbacks, considering the quality of opponent, because Mississippi State wasn't very good. Just a really pathetic showing on offense. The 3 points that they got came off of a field goal. That obviously a field goal, but came off a field goal after an interception. They set them up in Mississippi State territory. That's the only reason. Then went down to Florida, fired Dan Enos after that game, justifiably. Went down to Florida. But also think about the defense. The defense played pretty damn well against Mississippi State. Held Alabama to 24, held Ole Miss to 27. I mean, they were playing pretty solid. Even the BYU game, that wasn't all on the defense. BYU put up 38 points, but go back and look at how those points were put together. It wasn't just on the defense. The Florida game turned into a shootout, went to overtime, obviously, won 39-36. The Auburn game just let go of the rope. Beat FIU 44-20, and then 48-14 against Missouri, just, again, let go of the rope, and lost KJ Jefferson. I'm sure he wanted to play a good game, but was injured very early in that one. So it's possible to think about it like that. Like, it's not like they got their butts kicked, but a lot of these are late game decisions. I get so sick and tired of not taking your points. Like, going like, hey, we're down in enemy territory here. Let's go for it. And you don't get it. And no matter how many times they've proven that they can't block in short yardage, you still keep going for it. You still keep running it up the middle. Remember how long it took them to run the Philadelphia Eagles play to get a first down? But they were so bad on first down, or excuse me, on fourth down and short and third and short, and they would still go for it. And it happened to them the year before too. And just think, like, so many times, like, if you just kick a field goal, I'm sure we could go back and look at that Alabama game, and there are probably instances like where they, probably could have kicked a field goal and didn't, and they lost 24-21, or against Ole Miss, maybe a similar situation. And it just doesn't take into account, like, how much momentum you blow. The momentum is a real thing in college football. And you don't go for it, or you go for it and you don't get it. Sure, the analytics say, well, the next time you go for it, you probably will get it. And then, you got 7 points instead of 6 points when you would have kicked it, so on and so forth. But you lose so much momentum in college football by not getting it, especially like if you're a road team, which Arkansas is. So Arkansas has to make the right choices in these critical fourth quarter situations, and not just fourth quarter, other times throughout the game. Got to make better choices, because they were right there. It's Arkansas has I can't remember what the mark is, but like was a long streak until like this Florida game where Arkansas was losing 1-score games, one after another, like a terrible, terrible record. Now, was Arkansas being coached up, playing above themselves and being close, or were they making mistakes? Were they making bad calls at the end of the game? Just don't know for sure. All right, who we got next? Paul Bond says, in your opinion, how pivotal is the Oklahoma State game? It's the biggest game of the year. I mean, until the next one, but Oklahoma State has not started off extremely well. And we talked about that on the last show. They lost to South Alabama last year. They lost to Iowa State last year early. They went on to win 10 games and finish ranked 16th in the country. And I bring up also, I don't know if I brought up the 2021 season. I believe, 2021. 2021, they won 12 games. They went 12-2. So I brought up their early season losses last year. I mean, getting beat 33-7 to South Alabama at home that's rough. But they lost to Iowa State early. But look how they started. Okay, so they only won 23-16 against Missouri State, Bobby Petrino's Missouri State. They only won 28-23 against Tulsa. This is the first 2 weeks of the season. They only won 21-20 against Boise State. I mean, they won 12 games that year, but they won a lot of close. And hey, that's decision making at the end of the game. I mean, we just talked about Arkansas's decision making at the end of the game, and Mike Gundy's in his 20th year. I mean, they got plenty of talent at Oklahoma State. I mean, in theory, like if you want to talk about Oklahoma State's money, I guarantee you Arkansas is spending more money in NIL to bring players in to their school than Oklahoma State is. I guarantee you they are. Very pivotal game, Paul, to answer your question. We're 27 minutes. I feel like, I mean, if we're having any problems, let me know on the stream. If the audio sounds good, if the image is coming in clear. I mentioned also, eventually we're going to bring, and we'll work, Danny's got a studio set up now. We're going to bring Danny in studio. So Rod Toller says good technical quality. I was going to suggest doing the show with a selfie stick, but you got it. Knew you would. Yeah, I wasn't going to quit. I mean, to be honest with you though, like if this new browser changeover didn't work, I mean, I've gone through so much stuff. I mean, I have tested every single possible connection, everything I can do. But if this didn't work, I was just going to switch to like Ecamm or something like that. Just try something else because it works in OBS. The problem with OBS is you can only go on one platform at a time. So I could only go on YouTube or only go on Facebook. I wasn't able to expand and go on multiple platforms like StreamYard allows you to do. Appreciate that, Rod. Will Bonham says, "Hey Trey, do you think we would have been more successful if we had hired Lane Kiffin or Eli Drinkwitz, and you regret the hire of Sam Pittman?" Well, I don't 100% know that answer on Eli Drinkwitz. He is having success at Missouri, obviously. Kudos. I think the answer on Lane Kiffin is probably definitely yes. Yep. I think that Arkansas probably had that deal done. But here's the problem also. Arkansas was not in a good state. The hiring of Chad Morris was an utter failure. I mean, that goes without saying. They had an opportunity to hire Mike Norvell. From what I heard, Mike Norvell felt like he was being interrogated in his interview. But they wanted to hire Chad Morris. For whatever reason, that was the guy. And it was a weird time. Like, you just fired Jeff Long, your AD. You didn't have a sitting AD. You had a search firm. Julie Cromer Peoples was leading that. She was obviously very inexperienced at the time. And they made a colossal error in hiring Chad Morris. There's no other way around that. I mean, it was just a colossal error. And coaches out there mistook Arkansas for being the problem. Not the coaches that they'd hired, not hiring Brett Bielema, the way things faltered at the end, not hiring Chad Morris. They faulted Arkansas. And you had so many people out there saying, Arkansas is the problem. And I'd mention Fuente, who was at Virginia Tech, saying, he wouldn't touch Arkansas with a 10-foot pole. That was a pretty common sentiment. Arkansas is not the problem. Every school has their issues out there. And with the NIL landscape, not with the NIL, but with the transfer portal landscape and the potential of NIL, Arkansas can close the gap on schools that have bigger talent in their backyard. Arkansas just doesn't produce enough talent, and they're not close enough to talent. That's the big issue. It's not like people want to say that there's a stigma with Arkansas. People don't walk around with shoes on. There's, all this kind of stuff. You going to tell me there's not a stigma with Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida? I mean, we make jokes about all those places. Texas, we make jokes about all of them. You're all toothless rednecks. I mean, so are we. We're just hillbillies. I mean, the problem with Arkansas is location. They're more remote than those other schools. So typically when a 5-star recruit is coming up in Georgia, he's going to end up going to Georgia or Mississippi. They grow up in Mississippi. There's a good chance they're going to go to Mississippi. They might pop over to Alabama. That's definitely close, but that's also a proximity deal. Arkansas is 5.5 hours away from Dallas, whether you're coming from Little Rock or Fayetteville. And that's your closest talent hotbed. That's where you can close the gap because players who've been through the recruiting process and seen and been to college, they have a different mindset of what they're looking for in a school. And location starts to fall to the wayside a little bit. It's interesting. You never hear people say anymore about, I'm going to enter it wasn't a transfer portal, but I'm going to transfer. And the reason is I have a sick loved one. Not that people didn't have that issue, but you don't ever hear anybody like somebody's sick and I got to move back closer to home anymore. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't mean to say that anybody's being disingenuous of why they entered or why they transferred before, but you guys know what I'm saying. Chris Bryant says, do you think we will see the offense run the option? Absolutely. I think they'll run some option. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what the RPO game is, but we'll see some true option stuff, I think. Pigpen says, if we have an injury at quarterback, O-line, or DB, are we screwed? Question mark. Yeah, I mean, so the depth of the defensive backfield concerns me a little bit, especially at safety. I think they have two. I hate saying like somebody's average, but when I say like somebody's good, people take it the wrong way. But like, so I'll just say like they're average safeties, Hudson Clark and Jaden Johnson. Jaden Johnson's maybe got a little bit more talent, but there are veteran, experienced guys. Neither of those guys, I don't think, are going to the NFL, right? So if they were to have an injury there, I could see some issues popping up. Definitely. They did bring in a couple of guys from the transfer portal, but once you move those guys up, you still got to have second teamers behind them. Your third team becomes your second team, and that's where you start worrying a little bit. So you got to ask for a little bit of help, I think, in the secondary. Quarterback, obviously, to me, it was obvious that Taylor Green was the best quarterback. Now, I like the potential of Malachi Singleton and also KJ Jackson. I think they have a lot of potential, but I would rather have a more veteran quarterback. So, and on the offensive line, I don't know. It just depends. Like, you don't need to lose Fernando Carmona. I'll say that. Other guys, you don't need to lose your center. Those two spots could be an issue, no question. And I lost my spot. I don't know how I did that. Okay, there we go. Do you blame losing or NIL on Kern's decision? I haven't spoken to Kern. That might be a better question for Danny West, who again we'll have back on next week. But I will say that losing has not helped Arkansas. I don't think it's over with Carius Kern because I think you have two options of the problem is you run in that December signing period and it's a quick turnaround. You need to have a coach hired, all that kind of stuff. But either Arkansas will win this season and that'll improve recruiting. I think that would probably be the best option for them to win. Obviously, we all want to win. We want to watch a good football season. It's the good home slate this year. So either that'll happen or they'll lose and everybody will be fired and a new coach will come in and that coach will obviously likely be at Arkansas for a while. And so you have that to sell. The problem is you got the quick turnaround with the December signing date. Or they'll win and that'll open up recruits' eyes. Okay, they've turned the corner. They've turned things around. So two ways to look at it. But NIL could definitely play a role in it. I don't think Arkansas is the type of school that needs to spend a ton of money on high school recruits. They need help now out of the transfer portal, not guys that they develop. And that's the crux that you're in. It's a difficult situation because you want to be able to develop through the high school ranks. But if you don't win now, you're not going to be here to develop them. So that's where things are. But I don't know if that's Carius Kern's reasoning for picking LSU or not. I just know that that's what he did. Keebler says Taylor Green will be a top 5 quarterback in the SEC this year when his running ability comes to light. Now, that's an aspect in the spring that we didn't really get to see. I mean, we got to see it, but you don't know how big of an impact it's going to be for a defense when they know that the guy can take off at any moment. And Taylor Green can break off, as I've said, 70-yard touchdown runs. He's got that capability. People take terrible angles on him. And when that fear comes into play, it opens up the passing game and it can make him a better passer also. It's a good point. Rebel One MMA, 10 weeks away from our first walk and talk. What do you think about that, boys? Yeah, 10 weeks away. I'll be walking around in War Memorial Stadium, I guess, after the UAPB game. Thatcher Carter says, I'm sick and tired of Arkansas getting 3-star football players. Now, there have been some good 3-stars, but you're right. We talked about that a little bit last week, how, I mean, I could break it down again, but if you're a 3-star, your chances of getting drafted are really low. Let me bring that up. Just because last week's show, I'm sure a lot of people probably turned it off. Okay. Because of the quality of the stream. So here's the numbers right now. There have been a lot of great 3-stars that have come through Arkansas, a lot. But I could also name a ton and probably easily name more 3-stars that just didn't pan out. But they do pan out every once in a while. So if you're a 3-star recruit, your chance of getting drafted by the NFL is 6%. This is based on the 16-17 class in the 2020 NFL draft. So that was 1,831 3-stars. 110 of them were drafted. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. So a high number, but with the number of 1,831. The 4-stars, there were 311, 73 of them were drafted. This is based on 24/7 Sports. That's 23.5%. The 5-stars, there were 30 and 19 were drafted. That's 62.3%. So pretty significant there. It also breaks down by first-round picks. You have a 34.3% chance of being a first-round draft pick if you're a 5-star. That goes down to 3.8% if you're a 4-star. It goes to 0.4%. 0.4%, 8 out of 1,831 if you're a 3-star. And if you are a 2-star, it is 0.005%. One first-round draft pick out of 1,949. Usually those guys are people that didn't go to camp, so they slap a 2-star rating on them. They never saw them in person, late bloomers, things like that. So pretty interesting data. And that is from, I need to call this guy out because he did a lot of work. Preston Guy, you can follow him at PGuy77. He broke that down. But also Thatcher, I mean, like, this is where Arkansas is. They're getting negative recruited against. The staff isn't going to be there next year. That's what they're getting told. And that's where things are. Juwan Mahone says, can we land all the Parkview kids? Yeah, they've offered like 5 of them. So we'll see how it shakes out. Dalton's Motorsports. How do you think the linebacker rotation will go? I think you're going to start Xavier Sorey and Brad Spence. I think when they go to the mint front, I think it'll be Brad Spence. I don't think it's going to be Nico Davier. I think they want to put a guy out there generally who's going to get some speed out there. I could see Brad Spence lead him in tackles and maybe pressures, maybe even sacks, depending on how much they put him out in that wide 9. So I think it'll be those 2 guys. And then after that, there's room for Carson Dean. I think you'll probably see a battle after that with Carson Dean, Alex Sanford, 2 guys who had pretty good spring. But also you brought in Worth and Dix from the transfer portal, 2 guys that have 60-plus tackles behind him. Dix was formerly at Florida State, a former 4-star prospect. So those guys have a little more veteran background with them. So I think it'll be the 2 guys I mentioned, Sorey and Spence, and then probably a battle for the 2 backup spots behind those 4 guys. Linebacker is a situation where I've said before, I said on the last show, that's a group that intrigues me, but there's a lot of wishful thinking there. You think they'll be good. You hope they'll be good. You're optimistic they'll be good. You just don't know that they'll be good because there's a lack of experience overall. Stephen McFall says, I think people are seriously overlooking Arkansas. Sam P has proven people aren't. Everybody's overlooking them if they're getting overlooked. I don't think there's any question. I think people are seriously overlooking Arkansas. Sam has proven with a good OC he can win in the SEC. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. 8-4 is quite possible, he says. So that to me is a fair expectation. I don't think 8-4 is unreasonable for Arkansas fans to expect. That is winning your 4 non-conference games. Okay, there's one tough game in those. That's beating your 3 win type of opponents, which Arkansas hasn't always done, as we know lately, and beating, a tough non-conference opponent. In this case, it's going to be Oklahoma State. And going 4-4 in the SEC, going 500 in the SEC, not winning a championship, going 500 in the SEC. Now, say you drop that non-conference game and you go 3-1 non-conference. That just means going 5-3 in conference. Winning 8 games, like, and feeling good about it, and maybe winning a bowl game to get a ninth, that's not unreasonable. Now, I don't think that you can expect that, like, we say Arkansas should do that. I think a down year should be like 7 wins. Going to a bowl game should be a down year for Arkansas football. And having the year every once in a while where you win 10, maybe 11. I'm not saying like every other year, but maybe every 5 years or something, having a season like that. I just don't think that that should be out of the reach for Arkansas. I just don't. But having the expectation every year of winning 8 games isn't ridiculous. It's not asking too much. It's just not. 500, asking for a 500 record, not have a losing record in conference. Thatcher Carter says Arkansas needs 5- and 4-star football players. Well, easier said. There's only 32. Where are you going to get them from? The state's not producing them. The last 5-star the state produced was probably would have been Traylon Burks, but he didn't ever go to any camps or anything. They're not going to rate a guy 5 stars without seeing him in person. They very rarely do it 4 stars. But McTelvin Agim was the last one, and I think he didn't move to Arkansas until like 10th grade. Before him, Darius Winston didn't pan out. And before those guys, Darren McFadden, who certainly did pan out. Big Man Ross says, you think Monte can do something in the kickoff return game or some kind of special teams role? I mean, it's possible you could put him on the – so, like, who was, like, the most underrated special teams player last year? Tyrone Broden. I mean, you're thinking about it right now. He's like, oh, yeah, he was a gunner. He was down there a lot. And he was also the guy on the other side who was stopping the gunner and, like, won at, like, a 94% rate, which is ridiculous. But Tyrone Broden was very valuable for him. So I could see Harrison doing something like that. Big guys who are like 6'3", 218, who can run and hit, those are very valuable on special teams. If you can run and tackle, like tight ends, safeties, linebackers, those types of guys, those are very valuable on special teams. And, he's kind of that size. So I could see that. And possibly, returning. I like a bigger guy returning kickoff. So Isaiah Satania did that last year. I would like to see a guy with a little more bulk doing that. But I'll tell you what I really like to see is never returning a kickoff ever again. Like, it doesn't work. Every single rule that's ever been created around kickoff return the last 15 years has tried to stop people, like no more wedge blocking. Okay. That's a major deterrent to returning. The fair catch rule, like every single thing that they've done has deterred. There's one more that I can't remember that they implemented. No wedge blocking. Oh, moving the kickoff back. That was the first thing that they did. Moving the kickoff up, from it was the 30, they moved it to the 35-yard line. So more balls would go into the end zone. And then they outlawed wedge blocking. And then they added the fair catch to get the ball at the 25-yard line. Unless you've got somebody who's just utterly dynamic, like, don't ever return a kickoff, because a couple things can happen. How many times do we see a good return get called back because of blocking the back, and then suddenly you're at your own like 5-yard line? You have stuff like that happen. You can fumble the ball. You most likely aren't getting to the 25 if you take it out at the goal line or in the end zone. You most likely aren't getting back to where you would have gotten. So it's just really pointless, in my opinion, to even return. And I get a little annoyed, like when we're spring football and they're working on the kickoff return game. Like, why are we wasting time working on the kickoff return game? You should never return a kickoff. But I do like Isaiah Satania at punt return, so I think that's probably going to cancel out any chance for Monte Harrison in that regard. But if you ever do return a kickoff, I'd like to see a bigger guy back there. Nothing against Isaiah Satania. I just think there's a reason there's a prototype for every position, right? Okay, where am I? Cody Calhoun says he's not saying a word. Yeah, you jinxed us last time, Cody. Actually, I mean, for whatever reason, it's like the 5-minute mark is where it drops off. So Lynn Brown says, 5th head coach, and we're talking about how mediocre the OL coach. What a mess. 5th head, I'm not sure. You might need to rephrase that. Jesse Stewart says, "What do you think? What would you do if Arkansas went 10-2 this year?" Um, I have not even entertained that. I've not entertained a 10-2 season. So what would I do? I mean, it would be great. I would love to cover a winning football team. I mean, I don't know what I would do. Be happy, be proud of them, excited. We'd complain about those 2 losses, though, wouldn't we? Joseph Tomeo says, "Did you change the AT&T?" No, it's not the internet. We are still using Ozarks Go. I mean, like I can run a speed test. Like when I was plugged in with the Ethernet cable that I ran, I was pulling like 950 megabits per second up and down. And wirelessly, I go like 550, which is humming wirelessly. So it's not the internet. Trust me, I've tried everything. Like I'm testing patches, drop patches, nothing. It is some way the way StreamYard does not like the cache in Chrome. I don't know what the technical side of that is, but that's ultimately what came down. Again, new capture card, new dock, tried to run hardwired in, rebooted, reset the camera from scratch, everything. I think the picture's coming in a little bit better. So I am glad I got the new Cam Link card. I was running this guy right here before, which I used this guy for 5 years. I've been doing this show, this little thing that helps your DSLR camera work with your computer as a webcam, because you get a lot more. It's just a better picture quality, better, a little bit bokeh effect in the back and stuff. So it's just a better picture quality. But this, the Cam Link is actually a little better. Well, I think it's pretty significant better. If you go watch the old videos, it's a better quality output on the other side. It was more expensive. So, but no, the Wi-Fi is good. It wasn't that. I knew it wasn't that. And I have had AT&T internet before, and it was an issue. I couldn't stream ESPN without it pixelating. Okay, let's see. Lynn says, fifth year head coach. That's maybe what you're talking about. Yeah. And I've said that before, I never would have thought that the undoing of Sam Pittman, possible undoing, would have been offensive line. Jason Green says, "I really think we're going to shock some people this year, Trey. Look, when Pittman had Barry Odom on his staff, he has Petrino on staff and helped the in-game situation also, who are our starting linebacker." We covered that pretty much, but I think that's, a take that people start drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. And hey, I hope everybody's right. I'm kind of leaning towards around 5 wins. I mean, it could either be like 8+ wins or 3 wins. I mean, it really could. Like that could be the situation you run into. Like if things don't start very well, you could obviously see some letting go of the rope type of stuff. So hope that doesn't happen, but it could be a pretty wide gap. Like if the season were mixed around a little bit and you had more easy games, you had more games at home, maybe you generate a little bit momentum. But like there's the possibility with the 3 games away from Arkansas early, your first 3 tough games, that things could go really bad in a hurry. The defense suffered from the same thing. Arkansas pitching suffered from constant pressure kills. Bot magnet. We're going to have to start throwing more money at elite players to have a chance at competing. The problem is, bot magnet, that's on you. Doesn't that stink? I mean, the University of Arkansas made $167 million in revenue last year, 2023. But you go to the fans and say, hey, we need you guys to chip in more so we can get these players. It's just ridiculous. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? So Alan Campbell says, why does the hog look like a wolf mane? So I generated that with AI. what was it? Bing, I think. Bing Create. I generated with AI, and it was the best one that came up. But I was, I've been focused on trying to get this stream up and running. I'm going to come up with something better for this spot right here. This is what he's talking about. But I don't think that looks too bad. It's not a bad looking Razorback. I mean, I'll come up with something different from there. But yeah, I'm not totally pleased with that, but it was down the list of things that I needed to accomplish. Razorbacks have fur. Razorbacks aren't red. Our Razorbacks are. Law Dog says, curious about your opinion of Taylon's upside versus KJ. Do you think we'll notice better decision making from Taylon than we did from KJ? If so, is that due to Petrino or talent? Something I always noticed about Petrino when they're, let me start over because I might clip this up. Something I always noticed about Petrino in practices, he's standing behind the quarterbacks. They're like running goal line stuff. And quarterback snaps the ball, and you see Petrino go, like, look immediately where the ball needs to go. And then you see the quarterback, throw in a different direction and an incompletion. And you see, he's doing that face, kind of jutting his neck out. He's got his little pad. I can't hear what he's saying, but I kind of got an idea of what he's saying. So he knows where the ball needs to go every play. Like there's nothing the defense is putting out there that he hasn't seen. The problem is getting it relayed to quarterbacks that have 40 years less experience than him. And so I think where you're going to see some benefits of the headset, which runs until I think 15 seconds are left on the play clock. I think you could also see teams maybe getting a little bit faster just so they can get to the line of scrimmage. You can still talk to the quarterback apparently then, which I don't like. I think once you get lined up and set, I think it should go off. But it's until the ball is snapped or 15 seconds, whichever comes first, I guess. I think you're going to see a real benefit with that, with Bobby Petrino being able to be in his quarterback's head, talking to him all the way up to snapping the ball with 15 seconds left, or whichever comes first again. So, but I do think Petrino is going to help his quarterbacks in that, and then having that added aspect of it, I think will also be a pretty big benefit. I did see some times where he was just off the mark a little bit, and I think in the spring, and I think that was possibly some install, or maybe it just being his head. But and I've said this before, like throwing the ball, like there was one practice we were out there, and all the media people are just looking at each other like, what's he doing? Because it would be like 7-10 yards out of bounds on like a deep ball. And you got to give your guy a chance, and he wasn't throwing it away. So Law Dog asked, curious about your opinion. We did that, didn't we? So my opinions on his talent. I don't think I answered that part of the question. That's what it was. So KJ had what's wild to me to think about is KJ was sacked 47 times, and also think about all the great plays he made in the backfield, shucking tacklers that most quarterbacks can't do. And they still sacked 47 times. I think the team total was 49 sacks, and I think 47 were on him. So do I think his talent is better? I just think they're such different quarterbacks. I mean, like we'd all take 2021 KJ Jefferson, right? In that Kendall Briles offense. Like if you said you get the Kendall Briles offense, 2021 KJ Jefferson, we'd be like, take it. I just think Taylon brings different stuff to the table. He's not as like buck as KJ, but he's faster in the open field. People take, as I said, terrible angles on him. It's just a little bit different quarterback. KJ really struggled also earlier in his career on the intermediate throws, and I think maybe Taylon could be better at that. I don't think either of them are great passers. I think Taylon maybe gets a little streaky, like where he gets hot and cold. What's the momentum like if we start the season 3-0 going into Auburn? I don't see Oklahoma State or Auburn as unbeatable. Neither are, but it's still, you're going on the road, 4-0 going into Dallas. I'll be there. What's the momentum like? Starting off 3-0 and playing Texas A&M. I mean, there's going to be a little juice behind you. You just beat it's Auburn first. Yeah. So you just beat Oklahoma State. You came back home and beat UAB. You're 3-0, and you're headed to Auburn, which Auburn is beatable. Like they just laid down against Auburn last year. They just laid down and let it happen. And that was really disappointing, obviously, because that was the first sign that they really just kind of quit. And that's what I mean. It's going to happen when you have that kind of season. But Auburn's not unbeatable. I mean, they're still rebuilding. They had a lot of change up. They changed defensive coordinators. They're not unbeatable. It's for some reason it's tough to go to that place. It seems like always something happens. You get stuck in the elevator. You get a terrible officiating call, things like that. I mean, there's been a lot of bad calls at Auburn. Think about 2020. Okay. James M says, Trey, thanks for keeping things sane. Some of these new podcasts are out there. It's nice having you, who we trust, always giving us facts. Appreciate that, James. Ben Frost says, there are other good podcasts out there. Ben Frost says, what's the highest outcome with the schedule we have this year? The ceiling. Let's look at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, probably dropping 3 games. Like if everything, you can't believe how great everything went. Dropping 3 games, that would be. I hate to say that because people are going to misquote me or think I'm like saying that. What's the floor? The floor would probably be 3 wins. The ceiling, 9 for this team. I mean, that's like splitting Ole Miss and Texas, splitting Tennessee and LSU, and probably dropping 1 between Oklahoma State, Auburn, Texas A&M, and Missouri. How many more we got here? We got a lot of questions. Man, we had a lot of interaction. Keebler says, have you thought about getting players or maybe parents on? I've been seeing it on other pods. Other pods do that kind of stuff. I haven't really thought about going that road. We usually, when we have guests on, we usually have an expert media person from another team that can really give us a lot of insight. That's kind of the direction I like to go with this. Yeah, I mean, other podcasts can do that if they want. I haven't ever really thought about getting a parent on. I don't know, maybe. I've had former players on before. I've had War Machine on to talk about, some of the stuff he does with cutting up videos. I've had Jonathan Luigs on. Maybe I'll do stuff like that here and there, but no, I don't really do that too much. Camo Gang says, we got those teams' worst efforts. I mean, that's one way to say it. You could say that. I don't know if that's 100% true, that they got their worst efforts. That's just kind of maybe a negative way of looking at Arkansas having success or almost having success. That's maybe a better way to put it. Dalton's Motorsports again. Don't forget that field goal against Mississippi State was on the very first possession of the game. It sure was. I believe Jalen Braxton intercepted that ball. Stanley Pollard says sync, audio, and pick are great. Appreciate you, Stanley. Appreciate the feedback. Bot Magnet says got to take your medicine. Scott Crenshaw says, with the way college football has changed, do you think programs should establish GMs similar to the NFL? I absolutely do. Feels like a head coach has to fill both roles in the current landscape. Yeah, I mean, I think we're probably headed there. I think some schools have that, really. But I don't know if it should be on the coach to be like saying, I can get you this much money, I get you this much NIL money. I mean, I think we're probably moving that way. It's a slow go to get there, but we're headed that direction, I think. Pickman says, what's your honest opinion evaluation of Hudson Clark? Is he really our best DB? Hudson Clark gets blamed if it rains outside. Hudson Clark was pretty good last year. I mean, considering everything. I can remember like the year before last, people are just all down on Hudson Clark, and I'm just thinking he's not even close to their biggest problem in the secondary, and wasn't. Last year, he actually played pretty well for him. I'm not saying like he's an all-star or an all-SEC player, but the hate that he gets is really overall unjustified. So that's my honest opinion on Hudson. Not an all SEC guy. He's not going to the NFL, but he is a veteran guy that has been there year after year. He's all hog, and he gets way more hate than he deserves. And now that he's at safety, he's at a much better position than he was at cornerback. He lacks some recovery speed. He lacks some size. He's gotten bigger. I mean, I noticed that last year very early. You can see it in the guy's shoulders. But Hudson is one of the more underappreciated. He is the most underappreciated Razorback. Maybe, I mean, try to think of somebody. Think if you can think of somebody who's more underappreciated than Hudson Clark, I'd like to hear it. Leave it. I was about to say, like, leave it in the comments below. Somebody brought up this, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Big Game Boomer. It's a Twitter site. I guess they probably on other social media, but like they say that they have a show and a podcast. I don't even think they've recorded anything like years, but it's a troll account, and it's built 100,000 views on trolling fan bases. So their latest thing, they came out with their top 50 tight ends, I think, nationally, and they have Luke Has at 47. Of course, there's a ton of Razorback fans interacting. How could you do that? Are you crazy? All this stuff. That's exactly what they want. Like, they have trolled you, and they've got you to interact and comment on their video and boost it. I mean, there's two things, like picking Big Game Boomer as a name. So that's kind of a troll towards Oklahoma, right? Boomer Sooner. And using 24/7 college football stuff. So that's like indicating to some people that they're associated with 24/7 sports. But it's genius. It's annoying, but it's genius on their part. But people comment and they interact with all the posts and all this stuff, and they have built 100,000 followers just on trolling people, and people don't know. It's not the way I would do things, but it's not a stupid thing. I mean, they're getting by with it. Okay, sorry. Dodge Challenger says, I was high on the return of Bobby as OC, but my peers around the state have me feeling impending doom once again. The only reason that Sam Pittman could still be here and we're not, there's plenty of people that are upset that there wasn't a coaching change, but the only reason that you could keep Sam Pittman, in my opinion, and not have just total toxicity in the offseason was hiring Bobby Petrino. And I'm not sure that there's anything else that they could have done. I'm not sure that there was another move that they could have done aside from hiring Bobby Petrino, because you get the effect of, okay, well, all right, Bobby's back. Let's see what Bobby can do. Let's give Bobby a chance, So it changes to that narrative a little bit. Otherwise, I'm just not sure how it would have been just so toxic this offseason, because people want change. And I like Sam Pittman. I've said that before. I think he's a good guy. I really do. It's just, you can't go, 7 wins and you lost to Liberty that year. And then, you come back the next season, you go 4-8 and in year 4, in your money year, and it's just the nature of the game. It's the nature of the beast. I don't think that Sam Pittman is a bad coach. I think he's a really good offensive line coach. That's what just blows me away, that the offensive line has been this bad. I think that they'll take a major step forward. But Pittman's got to make the right choices at the end of games, and he knows that. And I want Sam Pittman to do well. I like Sam. It's just, I understand where you come from as a fan. I mean, I grew up in this state. I went to the University of Arkansas. I've been covering this team for 21 years. I know the people. I know the fans. I live with you. Terry Williams says Arkansas going to be a lot better than what y'all think. There's a few people that have that opinion. Dodge Challenger says some have expressed concern, but I like the schedule this season. I do not. Bot Magnet says BMFP is the best thing we got going, bro. Possibly so. Rusty likes the stream. Appreciate you. Big Nasty says, Trey, is it true Houston Nutt has taken a role within the program? That's not true that I know of. It's not true that I know of. I like old Houston Nutt still. Missouri will be trash, says Terry Williams. Missouri, think about this. Missouri in 2022 was 6-6. They won 11 games last year. 6-6 to 11 games in 1 year. I mean, if they didn't win last year, they probably would have made a coaching change. What's Eli Drinkwitz's coaching records. Eli went 5-5 his first year, no bowl game, 2020. Well, they might have gone to a bowl game. Yeah, they went to Music City because it was the COVID year. Everybody was eligible. 6-7, 6-7. 5-5, 6-7, 6-7. 2023 comes up and you go 6-7 again or something, they would have made a change. But he went 11-2, and he's going to be there a while because of that. It's their, it's interesting that Missouri, Ole Miss. Let's see, Missouri, Ole Miss, and Texas, the three teams that a lot of people think will be Arkansas's permanent opponents starting in 2026, are at the peak of their relative existence. This is the first time Ole Miss has won 11 games last year. I mean, Missouri has had some good seasons, but it's been a while since they won 11. But they had some good seasons in the past, early when they joined the SEC, when they were in the Big 12. We remember that. But, they've been down, obviously, the last several years. And then Texas, Texas hasn't been as good as they were last year since Vince Young was it? No, since Colt McCoy was there. When that's been a long time. So all those teams are at the peak of their relative existence, and Arkansas is Arkansas. Sonic Woo Pig says, Woo Pig Suey from Costa Rica. Trey, love your show. Must watch, must listen. Appreciate you. Throw us that 5-star review if you haven't done so. Hey, if you want to sign up at HawgSports, go ahead and sign up at HawgSports.com. 30% off deal for the annual subscription breaks down to $627 a month. Billed at just $75.18 for the year. That's a discount of $44.22. Or you can sign up for the monthly plan, pay $9.95 a month, and get Paramount Plus for absolutely free with that monthly plan. Two great ways to sign up. Keller Smith says, Keller Smith is blocked for spamming. Trying to get you to watch his live stream. Dodge Challenger says being shoeless is now a sign of aristocracy. I mean, when I was a kid, we walked around shoeless all the time, I guess. But as an adult, very rarely. Juwan Mahone says there's more than enough talent, Trey. Tell Under Armour to run a camp like they do in other states. Under Armour, run a camp like you do in other states. Pittman is the Green Mile. Let's see. What else we got? We've gone for over an hour here. Hey, we've had a clean stream, right? I feel like we made it. Dut Mac says, "Does the hiring of Calipari change the perception and help with the hiring of a future football coach?" Maybe. I mean, here's the deal. Like, if things go awry this year and they are on the search for a new football coach, no football coach is signing up if they feel like the NIL isn't great. No football coach worth his salt. Like, you want to go out and get like a John Sumrall or a Chadwick or a Lashley or Traylor or Womack or Kenny or, any of those guys that have been mentioned. You're not getting any of them unless the NIL is in great shape. Just not happening. Getting spammed. Let's see. Justin Williams says a long thing. So the fluke 4-8 last year. Solid offense coming back. Much better OC. Secondary stacked. Lost 8 games by 7 points or less. I don't know if that's quite right. He's optimistic. NIL needs to be at a minimum $7 million for football. Well, it needs to be at $10 million minimum. If you want to win, like I said, expect 8 wins. What's the minimum record for them to keep Pittman? I mean, after 4-8, if they win, I think you're teetering if you win 6 regular season. And it's not like the bowl game is going to matter because the decision would be made before any bowl game. But you're teetering at 6 is what I think. I think that's the balance. You win 7, he's retained for sure, I think. And this is regular season we're talking about. If wins and losses matter, why is Auburn 6-8 recruiting? Well, there's more factors than that. First of all, Auburn is in their second year with a coach. Hugh Freeze isn't on the hot seat. All right, he's building for the future, so that should be obvious. Secondly, Auburn is in South Alabama, an hour away from LaGrange, Georgia. They have access to talent in Florida, the state of Alabama. They're not too far away from Mississippi, but Alabama, Georgia, Florida. I mean, this all should be. I mean, you know why. There's more factors than just that. Number 1 on the charts today, better than Ezra. What's up? Number 2, Ezra. Quote from Norm Macdonald. Number 1 on the charts today, better than Ezra. Number 2, Ezra. Okay. 7 wins, he stays, says Bot Magnet. Cody Shatter was a no-star. Matt Jones was a 3-star. He was. There are exceptions. I mean, we talked about this. Now, if you want me to go down the list of all the 3-stars that didn't pan out, I could do that. Maybe another show will do that. If you guys want to compare 3-stars at Arkansas, okay, we could do that. That would be fun. I guarantee you I'm going to pile up more 3-stars that didn't pan out. I guarantee you. And it's going to be a lot. And then we could do it with 4-stars. 4-stars of pan. That would be a good article idea. Maybe a good off-season article idea. Maybe I'll look at putting something like that together. Probably would do it VIP though, since we do 2 kinds of content at HawgSports. A lot of you guys read our free content out there, and we appreciate that. You come to the site, you see an advertisement, you read a good article. That's probably going to be at other sites too. You know, maybe it's some scheduling news or something that came out of a press conference. And then we do more well thought out VIP stuff, like that would be where I have to do a lot of research, take a lot of time to write the article versus, writing an article and getting it out in 20 minutes, which is like some of that content is. But our recruiting stuff, painting the picture of Razorback sports, basketball, football, baseball, painting the picture for you, and giving you recruiting updates, telling you what's going to happen or what's likely to happen. Those types of articles are VIP, and you do need a VIP subscription for that. And you can sign up for 30% off at HawgSports.com. No promo code or anything. We're one of the 10 largest sites in the network. I don't know if a lot of Arkansas people know that. Like, we're well inside. Like, I'm not supposed to say where we rank exactly, but we're well inside the top 10. I'll just say that. And I take a lot of pride in that, being an Arkansas-based company. I know other sites in the network see that, and they go, how the hell is Arkansas? Why are they up there? Why are they so high? Take a lot of pride in it. And I appreciate all the people that have subscribed. And we're up there for traffic too. I mean, obviously we're a smaller state, but we're way up there in the top 10 and all those categories. So come find out why we are. I promise you'll be pleased why you did. Auburn spends around $5 to $7 million. They spend more than that. 2 5-star wide receivers, they cost $3 million alone. They spend more than 5 to 7. I promise you. Taylor Green is going to be good. All right, we've gone a long time here, and I appreciate everybody. Can we please beat Missouri this year? Depends on how things start. If there's a chance at that, if the season tanks, there's not. Is it true we haven't offered the Archer kids? They offered Kane Archer. They haven't offered Cash yet, but he's close. He came to camp. Okay. Arkansas will be better because KJ tapped out after 30 a sack. I mean, it's hard to keep taking shots, We talked about the baseball player, Monte Harrison. Deep down, Trey, do you think Sam knows it? I would hope he knows it's do or die. Yes. JBM just beat Missouri. Man, we've had a lot of interaction. I appreciate everybody. I am starting to lose the voice a little bit, though. 1976. We sucked in 1977. We almost won the Natty. Thought of Missouri be happy. 10 weeks, still 2-10. We big, question mark. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody joining in. This is the first live stream we've had using StreamYard going on multiple platforms. I screwed up the Instagram one, so that'll be for another time. But we're on X. Follow me if you haven't followed me already. We're on Facebook, where we have 90,000 Razorback fans following the page. And we're on YouTube. I think we're about 20,000. Subscribe to the YouTube page if you haven't done so. Most people who watch the show aren't even subscribed. So subscribe to the YouTube page and set it to where notifications, let you know every time we upload new videos or start streaming live. And also follow us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found, and throw us a 5-star rating and leave a review. Take a moment to leave a review. I can tell you, let's say the last time. Now, we haven't been as consistent. Obviously, it's the off season, so we haven't run the show as much as we will, when we're going. We may go more than a couple of times a week this year, but we're going to go at least 2 times a week this year. The show right now on Apple Podcasts is the highest rated show in Arkansas. It's 4.9 stars. There are 966 reviews. The last review we have on there was April 29th. From Justin Bond 007. This podcast is very informative, up to date, and just fun to watch and listen to. Trey is awesome. Let's screenshot that and send it to my wife. All right. So it's been since April since we've had a podcast review on Apple Podcasts. So take a moment, please. If you haven't done so already, throw us that 5-star rating. If you like the show, if you don't, do whatever you want. But if you do like the show, we'd love to have a 5-star rating. And I love the reviews. I read all of them. So know that it will be seen by me, and I certainly appreciate it. All right, everybody. We've got a lot more comments left, but we have gone an hour and 20 minutes. That might be a record. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate everybody. Sign up at HawgSports, HawgSports.com. That's it. That's the show. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com. We'll catch you next time.